Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I'm H.A. Conrad coming to you from Brooklyn, and with me, as always, is my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin, on the West Coast.
What's up? Hello. Welcome. And Merry Holidays.
Merry Holidays. Lots of stuff going on. Not necessarily zombie related. We just watched Soul, and we watched Wonder Woman 84. 1984.
Yeah, I'm about 30 minutes into Wonder Woman, and it's kind of hard to watch a little bit. I mean,
well, I don't want to.
Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal are. There's a lot of potential there, and I'm waiting to see how much they're going to let those two work with what they got.
I give it 2 thumbs down, but
oof.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how much have you? What is the DC movie that you have given 2 thumbs up to?
I don't know, but I'm sure you're aware of this, but I am a huge Wonder Woman fan. I was really excited to see that this is coming out, and I thought that the first scene was kind of fun. You get to see Wonder Woman doing her thing in that, and I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, but we can talk about it later. But basically, I just felt like this was weak sauce, and kind of like shocking to me a little bit, just the themes and the storyline. But part of me couldn't tell if they were trying to go for that extraordinarily cheesy 80s thing and kind of went overboard, and it got sort of
that mall scene was definitely very. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of 80s.
And there's that, and I'm like, all right, but anyway, finish watching it, and then we can discuss one of my. I have a few big issues with it, but anyway, so there's that. However, Soul is really kind of lovely. So if you haven't caught that yet, that's fun too. So,
okay,
it's the Pixar film.
Copy that.
So totally unzombie related. We also watched, Anna and the Apocalypse. We watched that the other night, and that was, it sort of surprises me that they haven't done a musical of this, like literally, like, because I feel like this could be a really fun off-Broadway kind of thing. The songs are not bad, and I think it could be probably pretty easily staged.
I did see a listicle to this morning ranking songs from best to worst just for Anna the Apocalypse, which I thought was cute.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it in long enough that it didn't make sense for me to figure out which songs are the best. Do you have a best?
I think they sort of the big one that they did is the Turning My Life Around, when they're all like dancing through the cemetery and stuff. But I also like Hollywood Ending. But Bill especially likes the cemetery song, the Turning My Life Around, because he apparently he apparently has a soundtrack on his shuffle or whatever he's doing on his playlist, and was walking through Greenwood Cemetery, and it came on, and he was dancing around in there, which I was not there to see, and I'm pretty sad, but I thought that was kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of sweet news items going on today. Nothing, as always, the holidays, there's a little bit of dearth of news on the zombie front.
And to be fair, honestly, this Dread Central piece is from January. I found out about it. This is the Sleeping Beauties adaptation, which is a Stephen King property that's coming to AMC, which apparently has a very interesting premise. I don't know if you've read the background, this Dread Central piece.
Oh, you know what? I think I missed this somehow. I don't know how I missed it.
There's a pandemic involved that only affects all of the women. And it makes them go to sleep and form a cocoon or something like that. And if you wake them up, they turn into rage zombies, I believe is the basic premise.
Well, that's normal.
It's a very interesting and kind of Stephen King-y premise. It's coming to AMC as a show, I believe, and so people are excited. And the reason I heard about it today was somebody was writing what can Sleeping Beauties do to avoid these mistakes that The Walking Dead has made? One of these kind of comparisons, even though I'm sure it's still in pre-production because of COVID, I imagine. But
yeah, probably. Well, I'm sort of surprised we missed this, but that's kind of a cool idea for a show. I'm game. I'm cool with,
Stephen King comes with his own share of caveats, of course.
But... Yes, he does. But you know what? One thing I do find, though, is that sometimes if he has the right creative team that are there to kind of rein in some of this stuff, then, you know, or sort of help with the vision of it, then it's sometimes successful. So we shall see. You know, I don't know that we needed another version of The Stand, which, as you know, like that was out again, I think.
Yeah, it's on CBS All Access. I just have not paid for that.
Oh, and I'm not going to either. I just don't have any. I don't know that I need to see that, but all right, let's keep our eye out for this and see what happens and see when it actually gets released. So that's kind of cool news.
Yeah.
And then the other, I found this. It was just a silly little news article, but it's about these two friends that that basically made their own zombie film, but sounds remarkably like that film that we saw. Was it the Italian one where the guy's trapped in the elevator?
Yeah.
Even down to like certain plot points, and I'm kind of like, well, this is odd that they came up and decided to do this, but you know, it's there. I don't know how good it looks, but
it's on Amazon Prime for free.
Yeah, so might be worth checking out at some point. And you know, in COVID news, vaccines are being released. I don't know if you've seen things going on in California. I know here in New York, there had certain hospitals didn't put a lot of protocols in place for who was supposed to get them and not, and it was a bit of a free-for-all. I think that they've figured it out now, but basically there were a lot of frontline healthcare workers who have direct contact with COVID patients, like they work in the COVID wards, and they were being put in the back of the line behind healthcare providers that don't have that contact, and we're pretty upset, and because there's limited dosages of the vaccine, so there was that. And then there was another company here in New York, like I think it's like a healthcare. I don't even know what it is, like a net maybe, but they.
Yeah, I saw a headline that said that there was an investigation underway.
Yeah, it's unclear exactly what happened, but basically they started distributing it to members of the public, which isn't supposed to happen yet. It's still supposed to be just frontline healthcare workers and people in nursing homes, and so they don't.
So it wasn't to like celebrities and rich people, was it?
Unclear.
That would be my concern.
I have a feeling that perhaps that is what's going on, and I tried to look up the name of it looks like it's maybe a concierge healthcare provider. So that could very well be the case. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but you know, and I think you're going to see some of this going on. But we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. And then this wonderfully, apparently extraordinarily, the variant of COVID that is even more contagious has made landfall in France and other places. I'm sure it's probably here already. I don't know that there's anything that they can do about that, but hopefully as the vaccines keep rolling out, it'll hopefully get better. So that's fun. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else going on in terms of the COVID news. I mean, it's all pretty much status quo here.
Yeah, it's status quo, but it's also a little different. Like any of my friends who are nurses or firefighters are posting their shot records, which are all being handwritten. I feel like we're jumping back to the 80s, and because I still have some from when I lived in Asia of like these handwritten inoculation report cards and stuff. They look like old school report cards. And yeah, my friends who are nurses and like I said, and firefighters are posting their photos of them online, which I think, unfortunately, where I live in Sonoma County, it's important because we have a pretty high anti-vax ratio.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of effort going into convincing folks that this is going to be a good, safe, and healthy response, and a lot of testaments that hey, I've gotten it, and you should too, because we really need to get over the threshold.
I was heartened by the news that more people were on board with getting it than they had said before. So the percentages of people willing to take the vaccine, it's going up, which is it's good news. And I think that these kinds of things definitely help when you're publicly seeing people do it. I mean, I have seen the that there are people with very severe allergies that have had reactions, but apparently if you're looked at pretty closely and have an EpiPen close by, that's not as much of, like, you're okay. But it is something to be aware of, especially I think they're worried about people with severe like food allergies. Like if you've had anaphylactic shock with anything, they want to make sure that you're monitored if you do take the vaccine. They're interestingly not saying not to take it, just that you need to be monitored when you do take it. So that's interesting. But they haven't yet figured out what element it is, and they've had reactions with both vaccines. So there's apparently one thing in it that they think potentially could be it, but it's hard to tell. Interestingly, though, AstraZeneca, it sounds like that's going to come to market too. And talking to my mother-in-law, who is still stuck in Thailand, that may be the only vaccine that they will have available to them over there, because they won't have access. Apparently, the Thai government didn't buy or doesn't plan to buy the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, or something like that.
The Pfizer's pretty understandable. I mean, sub-zero chillers and all that, yeah.
But the AstraZeneca, I think that's what they had sort of bet on, because first of all, it's cheaper, but also, again, the storage and all of that. It's still interesting, though, because I did try to dig up ahead of our chat today more about their trials, and it's still pretty muddy. So basically, they had that group of people who had the half dose and then a full dose, and those people had a higher like coverage rate. Basically, it was like 90% versus 60%, I guess, which is with the 2 full doses. So that's still a little. I would love to know exactly what's going on there. It seems sort of strange to me. One theory is that they're saying that the half dose mimics an infection or primes your system more somehow. But if that's the case, maybe that they should figure that out before actually distributing. But I guess we will see what happens with that.
We shall.
All right, that's all we really have, I think, for this kind of stuff. Did you have anything to add? Any other? Oh, I did have one more thing to add about the COVID stuff. So the restaurants now are not. I mean, they'd pretty much shut down indoor dining, and one of the things that has cropped up has been the outdoor dining. And you and I have talked about this. Like, they basically have set up outdoor tents, which seem even more dangerous than the actual restaurants. And now the city has basically said, okay, to do outdoor dining, you need to have 2 sides of that tent open. Like, it can't be enclosed. So we'll see if people pay attention to that. But needless to say, I think that it's pretty hard on the restaurants because they are losing a ton of business. Like, I think that they're all in a pretty tough situation. So
yeah, it's heartbreaking.
I don't know what's going to happen, but hopefully they can muddle through until this all gets better. But so yeah, that's all I got. But today, what are we talking about?
Today we're talking about Alone 2020/horror, because unfortunately there were 2 films released in 2020 named Alone, which actually is probably the best year for that to have been.
Kind of funny,
right? The double release. Apparently the other one is about a woman in Portland or in Oregon somewhere in the wilderness. Oh. I did not read much beyond that. But if you try to Google this, you got to make sure
it's a zombie. So for me to figure, I said Alone with Donald Sutherland, and then it popped up the right one.
That'll get you right there too, because I don't think Donald Sutherland is in the other one. Thank goodness.
Yes, that's true. Are you ready to get into it?
Yeah, I'm just draining the last of that Moscow Mule. Which is
man,
tasty.
I was gonna have a glass of wine, but then I was like, I should be sharp for our
professionalism.
Talk.
Yes, that's what we
should be sharp for our talk.
I got a couple of canned cocktails for Christmas because my family knows me well.
Oh well, are they good?
So far, I've gone through a Bellini, a Bramble, maybe it was a Bramble Mule. And then this Moscow Mule. Yes, and all of 3 of them have been, not today, that was over the last couple of days. And so far they were all great. Oh. Although, you know what? I could handle a Bellini, a Moscow Mule, and a Bramble Mule, and then still podcast. That's how professional and good I am.
Well, you're tough. I just have no tolerance for alcohol anymore.
Then that podcast would be H.A. Snoozes.
Pretty much. But... But let's talk about this film. So, not shockingly, it has some remarkable similarities to #Alive that we reviewed, which is the Korean film that, with the teenager-ish guy stuck in an apartment.
Yeah, and they share a screenwriter,
Yeah,
right? Or at
yeah,
least the
Matt.
story was based on Matt Naylor's
Right,
um, original, and then he wrote the screenplay for this one.
right.
And I think he was a double byline is the wrong word, but it was like he was also billed as a writer, or at least he had some part to play in #Alive.
Yeah.
Yes, so and the stories are almost parallel with some significant differences.
Yeah. So, and let's, we did say this before. Bill's bringing me a glass of wine because he's an awesome person.
Aw, Bill.
I don't
That's
know. We may regret this. But so one thing you and I talked about when we reviewed #Alive was the fact that it did have some remarkable similarities to a movie that we both liked a lot more than I think other people liked, but The Night Eats the World, and which is the French film that came out
Yeah.
with the guy stuck in his apartment. Well, we can get into this when we talk about the review, but the things that I really liked about that film, I don't think either #Alive or this film do well.
No, I feel like there were, yeah. So, The Night Eats the World, as I feel like we've talked about a few times, is a zombie movie, buffs zombie movie,
Yeah.
where they really go into detail about like rationing your food, losing your goddamn mind, and it's like the level of detail is something we've never seen before or since.
Right. And one of the things that I really liked about it was because, when you see somebody who's stuck on a desert island, like Castaway, for example, you want to see the details of how they're surviving. You want to know, at least nerdy zombie fans like us want to know that. And that I thought was one of the and it was one of the things that other people who are not zombie fans hated about Night Eats the World, but because they felt like it was very slow moving. But I feel like that was one of the cooler things was him trying to stay sane, like, and figure out his supplies and ration out his supplies and all that cool stuff. And those details are really important. And I felt like both #Alive and this one fell down a little bit on that. And
A little.
I
I do think that #Alive had a little bit more of the showing the way that the guy ran out of water or other drinks, because then he like turned to booze. I feel like at the halfway point in the film. And he also had like there was at least a shot of all the food he had on the table at one point.
Right. They didn't do that in this one though. And that was
they just really glossed over all of that, except for at one point he talks about how much water he has, but we've never really seen anything to.
Yeah, I felt like that was like a weird thing. But and then the other thing that the setting in this was a little confusing to me. I think it's also supposed to be a very similar scenario, maybe. He was. I don't know if this is supposed to be his family's home, but it looks very much like a bachelor pad to me.
Yes. Whereas #Alive is, I think, his family's home,
and he's younger.
He apologizes to his dad. He feels younger anyway, but they might be the same age, like 20s.
Yeah.
He apologizes to his father before he breaks into the whiskeys, right? And like so, that part of it makes you think. But when we had issues with this in #Alive, because it wasn't clear if there were any other bedrooms in that apartment. All we ever saw was his bedroom.
Yeah, and this was clearly a bigger space.
It's a studio, and it has like a bedroom is like on a landing above, because they show him throwing the mattress down.
Yeah.
To the living room.
Yeah. So anyway, it just felt a little like, but in any case, so, but let's talk about how this film opens up, because this was also like, basically it really starts out where there's this woman who's had a lot of fillers put into her lips, in bed with him, sleeping, and sort of like, it seems as if maybe it was a one-night stand. I don't know. But she manages to scoot away in her thong really quickly and get out of the apartment really quickly, apparently like throwing on clothes and whatever and getting out of there. The timing seemed like he wakes up immediately, like he hears something. I guess he hears the door or whatever. But I felt like that was kind of an unrealistic thing for her to be out of there so fast.
Well,
But
she woke up and had a look on her face like, God damn, not again. Which I
yeah,
thought that was actually okay. You kind of understood what was
yeah,
happening. And I felt a little bad for him. I feel less and less bad for him the more we get to know his character, I guess, but not that we get to know him that well.
no,
He
we don't.
wakes up, he does a wake and bake, and then like the world is ending when he turns on the TV. Basically,
Yeah,
I kind of enjoyed these first few minutes too. Sure, there's there's the wake and scoot by his lady friend or complete stranger, not never cleared up, and there's the sounds from the hallway.
yeah, and and he immediately, yeah, and then he's got the balcony stuff where he's looking out, and similar to hashtag alive, this unfolds really quickly. Like they
Yeah,
just toss you right into it, which I think is all right, because you feel that confusion that he's supposed to feel, which is like, what on earth is going on? And they even mimic the whole thing, not quite honestly, not as horrible as in hashtag alive with the little girl and her mom, but
no. In fact,
definitely
I think they really missed an opportunity there. Like
agree.
that in Alive, it was like really clear what had happened. In this film, because of a slight difference in the way that they've done zombies, the way that they still talk even after they're
Yeah,
infected, it's not clear what's happening. And unless you've seen Alive, you don't necessarily understand that the girl is a zombie.
right. You just kind of see people go down. I don't know. So and you really only get this once the neighbor, like he's listening to the news or watching the news, and they are unfolding this, and his neighbor just comes in. Also, I guess the girl left the door unlocked because the guy just comes right in, which is
That's
just,
understandable. You can't. I mean, she wouldn't have a key.
yeah, but I don't know. And doors
But it's
auto lock.
exactly the same. Like, you know me, I'm your neighbor.
Yeah,
Like even the dialogue is the same in
yeah.
this
It's kind of
first
like,
scene.
wow.
And he goes into the bathroom and becomes more apparent that he is infected.
I do like how
Yeah,
they handled this because you don't see where he's hit until the camera angle changes a little bit, and then you see on the back of his neck, like there's
yeah.
blood there. Like I thought that was done pretty well because up until that point you're like, oh, maybe he is okay, and then he's clearly not. So that was kind of, and this wasn't as much of a struggle as in hashtag alive, because that was, he manages to thwart the hand coming through the door pretty easily.
Yeah.
But can we talk about the door? Because the door
How?
is driving me nuts throughout this
What's wrong with the
entire.
door?
First of all, it's so flimsy. I
Yeah.
just don't believe that it could take all the abuse that it gets dealt during this whole film. And I think he would probably need something a lot bigger than a refrigerator to keep that particular vector shut. I don't know. What do you think?
I didn't get a good sense of the weight of the door. I'll be honest.
It looks
Yeah.
like half an inch thin, and it sounds like
Yeah.
it too. It isn't, if it was one of those sort of bigger doors, like for example, the door in our apartment is a pretty solid, like, it's got double deadbolts and all this other stuff. Because that's just, I mean, I guess this is West Coast. It looks like West Coast anyway. So
Oh,
maybe,
it's L.A.
yeah. So I get that maybe they have flimsy doors there, but it just seemed like this wouldn't have held up very well for even the first day. But
And it gets a lot of abuse, this door.
but one of the things that I do kind of like, that they deal with in different parts of this is the
Joke on
flimsiness.
your wine.
Yes, I am. I'm joking on my own wine. Is the flimsiness of the walls
Yeah.
that connect the apartments. And, they do this a little bit in Night Eats the World with the floor, but he actually has to
Well,
make a big effort to make that happen.
and there's a shotgun. Yeah.
Yeah,
The problem
like,
with Night Eats the World, one of its few issues that we had with it
yeah.
was shotguns could shoot through nice solid core doors and flooring and all
No,
kinds of stuff.
but what I'm saying is that I do kind of believe that maybe the walls would be thin here, that it's like just these
Yeah,
kind of like
it's
flimsy. And
drywall and insulation and some 2x4s probably.
yeah, and so eventually maybe people could get through. And so that I was like, all right, that's kind of a cool idea, that this is not going to be a fortress. And so that I kind of liked. But, the door definitely bothered me because it just was one of those things that it just seemed like it wouldn't be able to deal with all of this stuff going on. Then maybe he'd have to sort of have a whole barricade somehow, like, out of Les Mis or something to keep it closed. Like, and let's talk about this actor. He's, tatted up.
Taylor Posey is the
Yep.
actor.
His dad is also in this as his dad.
Mm-hmm.
That was the piece of trivia for Amazon Prime
That
Video.
was the only trivia that they could offer us.
But I feel like at least even in #Alive and actually even in Night Eats the World, even though you don't necessarily have a ton of interaction with other characters, eventually you do have a bit, but you get a sense of who these characters are.
Yeah.
And granted, I think that it's a pretty hard undertaking to be an actor and not have anybody to act against. You're just like alone. And that's not easy, but I don't feel like they developed any of these characters really well. In fact, the only one that you feel kind of like you get to know is Donald Sutherland, and he's not on screen for very long, and he's an incredible actor. I would love to know how they managed to swing that. Somebody must have called in a pretty big favor, I'd say. But even, it feels like he's just like really trying, and it's hard. Like, I get it, but I don't know.
What you mean? The guy who plays Aiden.
Oh yeah, he's just.
I feel like there was nothing in the script for him to develop. He comes across as a super shallow. Yeah, he surfs. Yeah, he sleeps with people. Yeah, he drinks and smokes weed. That's like, what does he do for a living? We have no idea what this guy does. He has a family. He appears to care about them through the flashbacks we get, and the fact that he cries when, like in Alive, he kind of hears them getting killed or attacked at least. The way his character is written is extremely shallow, and I think he plays him as an extremely shallow, like, young man who might or might not have a job living in LA.
Yeah, it's totally well, and that's also why the age is a little bit unclear. At least with #Alive, you get the sense that maybe this guy is just kind of like, living off his parents. He might be.
He might be, or he might be like a professional streamer. I don't know.
But
you get a sense of his personality.
You
more
do.
Than Aiden doesn't have a personality.
No.
Other than, like, I feel like one of the best parts about him, like, divulging about himself is when he, in one of his video blogs, which he starts to do, he talks about, you know what it's like to realize that you're a coward. I thought that was actually a pretty good little
I thought
monologue.
that was okay, but I felt like, okay, so those video blogs are, I guess, supposed to be a way so that you can get to know him, and I felt like they fell down a bit there because there were so many things you could have done with that, and you still don't know a lot about him. And one of the things, and I do think that you see a lot more actually even, and again, this is a hard undertaking for any actor, and you saw a lot more out of this actor when he had somebody to act against. But the script wasn't giving him much to glom onto at all.
And frankly, the Eva character is no more developed than he is.
No, exactly. It's the same thing. And I even feel
and
like...
much less developed than that badass superhero that Junwoo from Alive had to play against. And I feel like her character was like, she gets introduced to the audience by calling him a dumbass for trying to hang himself, right?
Yeah.
And like, there's way more interplay between the two of them. And she does it by like pointing a laser at some at like letters in Korean on the wall. Like, I feel like with less they did more.
Also with Night Eats the World, when the woman is sort of in his imagination, she's still built up more than Eva is. So, and she's an imaginary, she's a figment of his imagination. And again, so and knowing that this is like the same screenwriter, it sort of makes you wonder why they didn't do a little bit more, because clearly he kind of knows, or I don't know which one of these came first, so maybe that has something to do with it. But
yeah, true.
But all they really give us with Eva is that she is sort of like weirdly stalking him or knows who he is for a while, has been like drawing him as a subject and knows that he had a quote unquote girlfriend or something, which I think is kind of weird. But
so I think maybe one of the things that Alive has going for it that Alone doesn't have is that, yeah, Matt Naylor worked on the screenplay with the guy who also directed it. And I don't know if it really makes a difference for the guy who wrote the screenplay to direct the screenplay. I think maybe it can help. but with a good director, it probably doesn't matter. But they were two different people in the case of Alone.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was thinking watching this though, even given clearly, this is a film on a budget, but it looked good. I thought that they did a pretty good job with lighting. I thought they did a pretty good job with certain camera angles. But
CGI
again,
was good.
CGI was pretty good.
Like when Brandon, the neighbor, starts to turn and his eyes start to bleed, that was like pretty
No,
seamless.
that was pretty nice. So I was like, oh, look at what they've done here. And I mean, look, I don't think they had no budget, but this is mostly in this apartment with this one character. They do like get you out of there a little bit, but even in with Eva, with the outside, when he sees her, that's kind of like a cool thing. You would imagine, like, that was one other mystery that I didn't totally get, which was like why he blocked all the light.
Yeah.
That didn't make total sense to me because you would imagine, like, I felt like maybe something got edited out that he was trying to, I don't know, that they would notice him in there. But that
You
didn't.
get the impression it was because he was afraid that zombies would see him and respond, and by coming
Yeah,
towards him. And that
maybe.
is a legit fear when one of the first times that they're outside together. It's a scene that also is in Alive, but I think they're much higher up off the ground in
Yeah.
that film because these guys are only on like the third or fourth floor.
Yeah, so maybe it's that, but again, there's like a lot of things that sort of they didn't close the loop on. I didn't feel so. It
Mhm.
was sort of like, okay, well, all right, we got this going on. All right, I guess that's just how it is. I
Yeah, like
do.
they lose so much of that potential interaction by the fact that his like 42 days into the apocalypse, his windows have been completely papered over since day
Right,
one.
right. But like and I do like it is interesting like that they changed the zombies. They have a virus that they basically call it the reptilian brain, and they keep a lot of them just say go away, or they say they say what they're trying to do, but they can't stop themselves. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take on it,
Yeah.
and I liked that, and that they are not technically zombies; they're more, I guess, a contagion zombie.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
guess,
Brandon should have died a long time ago, and he does die
yeah,
at some point in the film. We don't see him get killed by Aiden, but like at day 42, why are any of these zombies still wandering around
yeah.
unless they've had a constant supply of bodies?
Right, which it's not, and also they kind of mess up their mythology here or their canon here if that's the case, because apparently they'll only eat if you're like screaming or awake or something. So it
Right, because
doesn't
when he's
seem
unconscious, yeah.
so. So anyway, like he does, like he has his connection with Eva. Like it is kind of funny his sort of ham-handed interactions with her when he's trying to connect with
Yeah.
this neighbor that he hasn't seen another human,
That
which
was a nice parallel with Alive because I think it's Jun Yu. He's also like totally, like socially
awkward.
awkward. And
Yeah,
this guy also plays that well. I think he has the charisma to carry that off too.
right. And so that kind of worked out well. I
The
liked
the subplot of him being like, "No, I have to shave my beard off," I
that
thought
was
was
very
ludicrous.
odd, very odd, right? And the like, does he really need to take a shower in the rain, in the nude on the balcony? Like that was, and then of course they have her looking. It was just very strange.
It just feels so shallow. Like,
Yeah.
all the characters, like we've said, just L.A. Welcome
Well,
to Los
maybe
Angeles.
welcome to Los Angeles. Maybe that's what we're missing here. But I do like when he goes. I like when he goes out to forage, and it's again. I think you and I are slightly biased because we watched #Alive, but when he goes into a place and it's got all the mountain climbing equipment in the world,
Hmm.
and he doesn't take advantage of that. He's killed off the threats in there, and he doesn't sort of.
He just takes one little backpack.
Yeah, it drove me crazy. I just was like, not only do they have all this stuff here, they also have probably multiple bags. You could probably get a lot of stuff out of this apartment, and it's right next door.
I mean, Alive, he also didn't take very much, right? Like I feel like there was freeze dried food in there. He was super excited about that jacket and the walkies,
Yeah.
and Aiden, I don't think he even took a jacket.
All right. Can we also talk about his adventure to get her the walkie?
Absurd, crazy,
Right?
bananas.
I mean,
Like, yeah,
he has a
it's
way to
it's
get stuff to Earth without doing that. It seemed
yeah.
dumb.
No, like he goes all the way to the ground floor, which is a apparently like a super highway of zombie activity, just nonstop running back and forth. Yeah, it's crazy. It don't yeah, it doesn't make sense why they decided to do it that way. Then you also in that scenario feel like there must have been something cut, like maybe the suit zombie had somehow broken the wire between their two
Maybe.
balconies, but we didn't see that, and so it doesn't make sense that he's like, I have to go all the way to the ground floor and then throw this from the floor to her balcony as opposed to throwing it there from my balcony. It's probably the same distance.
Yeah. And then the other part with the suit zombie is that it shows just how easy it is to get to either of them. And
Absurdly easy to jump up there, especially if you're a massively overpowered suited zombie. Like the
right.
other one was a firefighter, at least. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
supposed to
so
be.
that felt like it might make more sense because maybe that person had done those things. This zombie didn't feel like he had ever done any mountain climbing. But also that suit in Los Angeles. Curious.
Maybe.
So, and then, of course, it's like another parallel, but slightly different. He's going off because he doesn't have food. And,
Yeah,
Juno did this too.
he did.
But yeah, because or did he? I felt like
Yeah,
he
he did.
did.
No, I was agreeing with you. He goes to the mountain climber's apartment, to his neighbor's apartment,
Right.
and he goes to that. Well, eventually, both of them together go to that other building and run into the Donald Sutherland
Right. So they're not
parallel
together in
character.
this. And
No, they're totally like they don't even get together until the very last second.
right. And
There's also before we get to that part though, there's also something that did not happen in the Korean movie, which was a zombie finds her way into his apartment
pretty
through the
easily.
vents, which is also there's no vent crawling in Alive as I recall.
No.
And I think that this zombie lady is his date from the opening of the film.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was his date, but that would make sense. How would she have
I,
gotten into the vent, though?
she was a very sneaky woman, as we figured out in the first couple. I don't know, but yeah, like she kind of looks vaguely similar, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And then you get another shot of her face when he does get down to the courtyard because he like falls down and looks over and there's a dead lady there, and I think that's
Oh,
after
okay.
she had thrown her off the balcony. I think it was her. I'm not 100%, but it would have been cool to have that as a thread through the film, and I hope they would have taken advantage of that.
Yeah. But I like the idea of the vents being sort of a danger too. That was cool, but also a way for him to get into the next place.
Yeah.
But I will say, just kind of going into these apartments without any sort of reconnaissance, without knowing. I mean, at least in hashtag Alive, they were sort of scoping places out and they knew places that were okay or not,
Yeah.
And here I feel like he just went into that place blind, and it was sort of like, dude, you're like talking loudly, you're just wandering around. I don't know. It just felt a little bit strange given he knows what's happening, like why would you go and he's already had the experience of the next door neighbor and going into that place, so he understands that there could be people in there, and it's just kind of a
Yeah.
strange thing.
He looks around very, very scantly before he starts getting on the walkie and talking out loud
Eva.
to Eva when he's in there. And yeah, his first move is I thought he was gonna like tap on the ceiling or tap on the edge of the vent to
Yeah.
make some, but instead he just drops his backpack with his only weapon down into the apartment before
I
he.
know. It was just very
Yeah,
odd. But this
it's yeah,
actually ends up being in at least a very interesting section of the film, and I thought it was pretty. Actually, I thought it was really successful. It was one of the better scenes of the film. He has sort of a slight argument with Eva. Also, can we also say Aiden and Eva, Adam and Eve? Come on, give me a
I
break.
kind of wanted her to get on him to walkie her and be like Eva, it's Aiden, and her to be like it's actually Ava. Don't
Yeah, I
just
know.
like that he's pronouncing her name wrong. But no, they didn't. They
They
decided
didn't
not
do
to do
it.
that.
They decided not to do that. But he's in the apartment talking loudly to her, and then gets surprised by Donald Sutherland. And I mean, I think he's so happy to see another human, so I can get that. But I think your guard would still be up. you're in this person's place, or you think it's their place with food.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing felt very weird to me.
There
And
were things that bothered me about this, which firstly, the fact that there was very little food in those cupboards that
yeah,
he was super excited about.
yeah,
It's like, okay, a couple bags of Twinkies,
yeah.
some nuts, some like granola bars and stuff, but not a month of
No.
food, as Donald Sutherland puts it. I'm like, maybe a week or
Yeah, I mean,
two.
there's really not that much in there.
When as opposed to in Alive, there was like it was a wall of food, I
Yeah,
feel like.
yeah.
So I think they could have done a little more. Like they probably had more on their craft services table if they had one of those in this
I know.
production.
It didn't, I mean, it's a pretty small thing to do, but maybe it was done to make, I don't know, make the audience skeptical about the Donald Sutherland story, which truly you should be skeptical about, because it doesn't make sense, and the whole thing felt weird from the get-go. And I don't know if you're just supposed to think that Aiden isn't picking up on this, or he's kind of dumb. I mean, he's savvy enough not to mention Eva because he doesn't want to.
Yeah, it was also interesting that they were how different these two movies are when he's like not with her and now he's lying about whether or not she even exists to this other guy, this other human. Very strange, isn't it? Curious.
Well, I mean, because they have a very odd conversation. I mean, and Donald Sutherland is clearly a little crazy. And I mean, I feel like Aiden's psyched to see somebody. I thought maybe he was sort of, I don't know, feeling like the dad vibes or something off of him somehow. I don't know. It was like a very. I think he was trying to be nice, and he knew this guy had been alone, just like him. But even the story that the Donald Sutherland character tells him doesn't totally make sense. Like he says he broke through the sheetrock in there, that the neighbor had committed suicide. There's plenty of food for both of them. He's asking a lot of weird questions, like whether Aiden's killed anybody. But I will tell you, like the Donald Sutherland's great. Like he plays this off really well. He totally is exactly what you think he is, which is somebody that has kind of gone a little nuts. And the whole speech about his wife, which you kind of get. I mean, this is my thing. It's like, oh, I was just kidding with you. I'm like, no, dude. I mean, the fact that Aiden didn't pick up on this and was still like going to turn his back on this dude is crazy. Bananas.
Yeah, a little silly. And why does Donald Sutherland have, or what's his name in the movie? I don't remember.
I don't even know. He's just Donald. Let's just say he's Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland. Why does Mr. Sutherland have his Edward? Why does he keep his prescription medicine in the kitchen cabinet of this next door apartment?
Exactly.
A weird detail. It doesn't even matter. Like it has no impact on the story whatsoever. But he's like, oh, those are mine.
All right. His name is supposed to be Edward.
Yeah.
There we go.
Edward. Thanks, Edward.
Donald. It's going to just be Donald because that's the best way to be.
But of course, having seen Alive, we knew exactly where this was going. His wife is, and in this case, Aiden wakes up handcuffed or zip tied or something with Mrs. Edward yelling, "Kill me," and also trying to eat him at the same time. And then I thought it was kind of an interesting conversation with Donald Sutherland talking to Aiden and being like, keep your voice down. It makes her very upset. And then she's yelling. He's like, Barbara or whatever her name is. Please, keep calm
down.
Or whatever. It seemed to actually work.
Yeah.
It was weird. Anyway, it was very strange. But Aiden rather somehow breaks through his bonds by breaking the bed and overpowers Edward / Donald Sutherland because the man is very old.
Yeah.
That's not super surprising and manages to get away. But I believe that is also when we hear on the walkie that Eva is in peril.
Yep.
Because she is kind of useless.
Yep. And that's also the annoying part.
It's a stark contrast from the Korean film. Yeah.
I mean, that's the other part. I'm just like, come on. We know you can do better because we've seen it. And she just is sort of like helpless on the balcony. Mm-hmm. And he has to go and rescue her.
Broken through her wall. And he has to. How does he do that?
He goes down and goes back up to her balcony, and then he's like, all right, come down this rope. And she comes down. Like, it's just ridiculous. I was really waiting because in both Night Eats the World and #Alive, the women are pretty awesome. And I was like waiting for that moment where she would become this thing, and this didn't happen. She did not become a crazy action hero. So
she's kind of fawning over him and is a good artist.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about the end of her. That's as much as
yeah, as that's what we know about her. And then they kind of battle it up back to his apartment, and they do the sort of like fake out thing where he gets attacked, and you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And I actually thought that they were going to end this in a different way based on what happened, but they didn't. And so,
yeah.
Unlike Carl from The Walking Dead, where he gets bitten and you're like, I don't even know how that happened. Somehow he manages to get zombie blood inside his...
And a hole in his shirt, but
yeah,
not bitten.
But not bitten. And it's all of a sudden okay. And then they're just sort of like holding the refrigerator against the door, and they're like, we're going to get through this okay. And
we're stronger together.
And that's it. I mean, it just was like fade to black. I was like, oh,
their run through the corridor, I thought, those were pretty good. They were, like, as from a production standpoint, you could feel the camera moving in front of them.
Yeah, I like that.
Like looking back, and it was pretty steady action. They were like doing a lot of hip checks and shoulder throws of zombies out of their way. I kind of enjoyed those shots. But yeah, I was not psyched about the ending. Like Alive felt a little bit neat and tidy. They kind of like they made it up to the roof and were rescued at the last second by the military. And maybe that's too clean, and this is more, a better ending in a way. But it felt less, because we still had no idea who these people are. I think is why I'm like, oh great, they're together, and now they can. I don't know, what are they going to talk? They're going to run out of things to talk about in about a hot minute, because they don't really have anything to say.
Yeah, I think that they, I think they missed an opportunity here to end it in a better way. I do think it would have been better if he had to take a header off the deck, but...
That would have been pretty sweet. And they're going to run out of Twinkies.
Really
Their plan
fast.
is to now wait this thing out and then maybe go find his sister. That would have been a cool angle, too, is to, like, get out of there, road trip for the third act. I don't know. Probably asking too much, but...
Maybe, but...
Maybe that's for Alone 2, the sequel. No Longer Alone.
I was trying to figure out, wondering if... But it does look like this production was after Hashtag Alive, obviously. So, I mean, my only thought was maybe it had happened and then they decided to do different cool things with Hashtag Alive, but that's not what they did. I don't want to be like down on this film, because there were some really good parts of it, but even just a little bit more character development could have made this so much better. And a little bit more, especially with Aiden, and seeing how he's surviving, seeing that he does have the bottled water, seeing what his supplies are. These are the kind of things that make you excited about a zombie film like this, because other than that, it gets a little bit, it's like very superficial and shallow. Yeah. I thought that there was going to be something to do with his surfing at some point.
Well, he uses a surfboard to wedge the massive back door into his bathroom.
I mean, something to do with surfing, like, I don't know, his agility, or, I mean, he's obviously in good shape, but I thought that there'd be something dumb that they were going to do where he somehow manages to, like, glide across the balconies or something, or has balance and can do, like, a tightrope walk or something, but no. Come on.
He can shimmy up and down a bedsheet blanket pretty well.
Yeah.
So, a bedsheet rope, rather. Yeah, there's just, sadly, there's not a whole lot to report on here because of how little character development there was. Edward, we lost you too soon. You had a lot going on. Aiden and Eva, not a whole lot.
Donald Sutherland is the best part of this movie, and it made me happy to see him. And I was like, who did you owe a favor to? But I'm glad you're here. It's good. And I think that was probably the best scene in the entire movie, is the one between him and Aiden, because it was so strange.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think this is the worst film I've seen, but I think because it's so derivative of Hashtag Alive, it's hard to see it.
Yeah, if we'd seen him in a different order, I think we'd have probably a higher impression of this. But because of that really does color the takeaway for us.
Yeah, but I'd love to hear what people think. So please feel free to reach out to us. You can send us an email at reanimatedpodcast at gmail.com. Wait, is it Reanimated Podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. Reanimated PCast on the Twitters, or just leave a note on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Please let us know what you thought of Alone, with or without the comparison to Alive. It's better. And next time you can join us for a recap of Zombie Child, a French film that we're going to watch from Shudder, with maybe a more traditional Haitian voodoo take on zombies. We don't know. We haven't seen it yet, but we're excited to.
But there's children and there's zombies, so of course I'm going to freak out a little bit.
Yeah, so HA needs to take some medicine before.
Maybe. But I look forward to chatting about with you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it's always fun, even to talk about the bad ones. So hopefully you'll join us again next time for something that might be a different flavor. We'll see.
Awesome. Until next time. Ciao. Thanks for listening.
All right. Bye.